So what I'm going to do is go right out these doors and across the patio there. And we practice bioterrorism. The chickens are out there commiserating with red-winged blackbirds, taking our diseases to the science base, Tyson chicken houses and golden fried chicken houses, and threatening the planet's food system. Well, we believe that God laid down an interconnected set of principles for us to live by. And one of our problems in our culture is we are an extension of Greco-Roman, Western, reductionist, systematized, fragmentized, disconnected, individualized, parts-oriented, it's all about me kind of thinking. And there's an equally valid paradigm from the East that's about holism. And the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. And it's about community, and it's about us, and it's about we, and my decisions do affect other people. And so, the problem with just thinking of the East is that we would have never developed, electricity or other things like that, because we've still been awestruck by lightning. And the problem is in the West, all we think about is innovation and parts, and we don't realize the results of our innovation, like three-legged salamanders and infertile frogs. And so I think that the best approach is to wed these two and take the soul, morality, and ethics of Easternism and wed it to technolithic innovation of Westernism, so that we actually have a moral framework on which to hang our innovation. Otherwise, we're clever enough to actually overrun our headlights, spiritually, morally, physically, ethically. So, there is an interconnected web of thinking. Now, if you move to the farm, and a farm is always, a piece of landscape is always a component of three essential environments. One is riparian, open land, and forest land. And the more we can intersect riparian, open, and forest, the better off we'll be. But ultimately, in our farm, we are grass farmers. And we will talk about that a lot more. But it's all about the grass, which actually has the ability to sequester carbon much faster than trees. But that doesn't mean we don't like trees. But in my stereotype, in my niche, and I'm going to be very open and transparent with you today, just so everybody knows when the speaker starts talking, I don't know where to pigeonhole this guy, right? I don't know where they're coming from. Well, I'm going to tell you where I'm coming from. I'm a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist lunatic. So there we are. Right now you know about pigeonhole, you know where I'm coming from every perspective. All right. And so in my capitalistic role here, I look at the forest and I say, how do we teach forest stewardship? And we teach it by practicing a profitable business in it that actually creates value there. So we sell a lot of firewood using multiple use equipment and machinery. One of the biggest problems we have in American agriculture is single-use, capital-intensive infrastructure. And what that does is it enslaves the next generation to practice the same kind of farming that the previous generation did, because you're so emotionally and economically enslaved to these big single-use pieces of infrastructure, like combines and confinement dairy operations. What happens when the son or daughter goes off, or young person that comes back and says, "Hey, Dad, Grandpa, how about we just let the cows go out and graze their own grass instead of having them confined in a confined feeding operation, bringing all the feed to them and hauling all the food back out there." And Dad and Grandpa go into apoplectic seizures. What? Come toddling out of the house and disinherit, disown. Whose child are you? Because we spent our lives putting together business plans and on our knees begging for bank loans to pour concrete, build rebar, build bankruptcy tubes, so we can do all this high capital-intensive infrastructure stuff. And so, whether it's profitable or not, it enslaves emotionally the next generation into it. So what we want is multiple use equipment where we can use it for a lot of different things. We understand we can't take these logs out as fast with a farm tractor and set of forks as you can with a specific knuckle boom loader. But a knuckle boom loader looks pretty funny pulling a hay wagon. So this is the kind of multiple reason why that. Then we bring the logs down to our bandsaw mill. This is a little sawmill that runs on a 20 horsepower engine. This is the ultimate information-based technology that's downsized, restructured, and miniaturized. You know, that's the when Kevin Kelly wrote New Rules for the New Economy and introduced us to the rules of the information economy, one of the principles was this downsizing, restructuring, and miniaturizing. A 120-pound secretary is going to replace a 4-ounce mail router. And so that's the kind of downsizing of the technology allows. Think of how much lighter our cars are today compared to, say, 1960 muscle cars, how much more information they have. When we even have microchips in the disc brake, you know. And so that's the kind of information. Here's an 800-pound sawmill that you can pull behind your Honda Civic, and you know, runs on a 20 horsepower Honda engine, and you're in the lumber business, and this is the kind of infrastructure we're talking about. So we can value add and take those forestal products and turn them into high value, usable products for us or for neighbors to sell. And then we take all the branches, we stack them with all the butts facing them one way, run through the chipper down. It's called this our communist machine because it makes them all the same size. And then that becomes the base for the hay shed in the wintertime, for when the cows come in to eat hay. In the wintertime, the soil is dormant, and our winters are more severe than they are here in Texas. But the principle is that in the winter, the soil becomes dormant, and so when we do feed hay, we want to feed hay on a carbonation diaper because those cows are dropping 50 pounds of material out their back end every day. That's a pretty big diaper. Let's clean out. Right? And that material is highly soluble. If it gets wet, it wants to leach into the groundwater. And if it gets dry, it wants to vaporize in the air. And we all know what that smells like. So what we want to do is use some sort of carbon, wood chip, sawdust, old hay, straw, some sort of carbonaceous material, and the diaper to soak that up, and it actually chemically bonds between the carbon and those nutrients to hold them in chemical suspension, so there's no vaporization and there's no leaching. And of course, it makes hay easy really because you just throw it downhill. As opposed to this kind of system, which is highly capital intensive. This is us. Well, it doesn't make the front page of the farm magazine, but you know what the capital is. It's functional. I'm all about function over form. All right. So we actually pay the chipper crews to drop wood chips at the farm entrance. We get about 100 truckloads of these a year, and this provides us our carbon flow. We are fiends on carbon. Municipal leaves. I think it's almost immoral in our culture that for the last 30 years we've been landfilling our carbon to the point that 75% of all the yard waste and biomass generated in this country have gone into landfills. That's immoral. So anyway, we want to create a value there. You know what? If over the years, if all the money that's been spent on chemical petroleum fertilizers had instead been spent on this kind of carbon composting, today we would have healthier soils, be growing more food, and we wouldn't have a dead zone the size of Rhode Island and whatever was going to Mexico. So the money and the ability is there. It's just it's just a water. It's just a water to do it. The water. Okay, so the head gate, the gates that the cows eat through are on pulleys, and we can raise them and lower them as the bedding builds up, as the diaper gets thicker and thicker under these cows. So the cows are eating through these gates, which are cantilevered off, so that the cows can't eat it. And also the organic clothing goes through. The men grow ponytails and wear tank tops and run naked, sandals, run naked through the woods on moonlit nights. The women don't shave their legs, everybody just it's back. That nature takes its course. Well, if we're not going to do the negatives to make the meat so bad, like ivermectin and systemic herbicides, to make the meat so bad it killed all the bugs, we're going to have to institute positive modeling to make up the difference in that system.